Welcome to Serenity Wealth Now with Chris Cooper. This is not your typical financial radio show. As a licensed CPA, insurance agent, and investment advisory representative, Chris coaches his clients on a holistic view of financial well-being with an objective of providing a complete financial strategy to fund life's goals. Chris is here to guide you down the path to the financial serenity you deserve. Now, here's Chris Cooper.
All right, so today we're going to spend some time talking about emotions. Emotions are a big deal, and we need to talk about them because if we don't talk about them, then we're going to have a plan defined for us. And that's why I spend a lot of time talking to people about emotions, the why behind our decisions, investments and strategies and all of the different reasons we want to accumulate wealth and grow, and it all gets back to emotions in some way or another. We don't want to make emotional investment decisions, okay? That's where I help people define a plan that we can stick to, that we feel confident in, but we don't want to make aggressive decisions that we don't agree with, right? So we have to invest within our risk profile. So a lot of what I do to help people is talk about the emotional thing behind it, right? So what's driving our decisions? Because it is about finance. I help people on the financial side all the time, but really it gets back to what are the emotions behind the reasons we want to do these things, okay? So I spend a lot of time talking about things that aren't always comfortable to talk about. Death, taxation, long-term care planning, right? That's called incapacitation, right? People are scared to have these conversations. They're emotional, they're stressful, but we have to have emotional conversations while we can, because if we don't, somebody else can have a plan for us, okay? So emotions are a big deal on the financial side of it. We want to understand the reasons we make decisions. We want to understand the math behind them. Sure, the math behind them is fine, but if the math adds up, but it's not because it's based on the right, equation, because we're asking the wrong questions, the reasons why, it's a very different ballgame. So we want to understand the why behind our decision-making processes. All right. So let's talk about on the investment side, for example. There are some vehicles. There's some great performance out there. The stock market's done incredibly well this week. Okay. That's great, but it also can go down. And you can't be expecting to participate in all the wonderful and growth of, 20, 30% returns and assume there's no risk with that. There is risk with decisions. And so if you're going to see a 20, 30% risk or a return, there's also that 20, 30% risk of decline. And if you're not comfortable with that 20, 30% risk on the table, you probably shouldn't expect that 20, 30% return. There's not a lot of things that give you the best of both worlds. So we have to plan, right? We have to plan. We have to be comfortable. And sometimes we have to find ways to make ourselves more comfortable. So I spend a lot of time talking to people about that. But emotional investing is really important. And I think that's where working with a professional, keeping you within the framework of you, right? Understanding you, understanding your risk, your concerns, your goals, your objectives, the things that are important to you. Most people, it's not about, I just want to accumulate money. No, why do you want to accumulate money? Why do you want this dollar amount? Hopefully it's to fund a lifestyle that we deserve. That's what I always tell people. We want to live our life, right? That's what's important. So yeah, you have to save, but we got to understand the emotions. That's what drives our decision-making process, and it's not always easy. So my next guest is an expert at studying about emotions, and I'm really fortunate to be very close friends with her. And so we're going to talk to Britt here after the break.
You're listening to Serenity Wealth Now with Chris Cooper. Request a free copy of Chris's latest book, The New Holistic Retirement, by visiting SerenityNowTax.com. That's SerenityNowTax.com.
Hey, it's Chris, and if you are worried about the risk of rising taxes, would like to keep your fair share, and reduce your partnership with the IRS, I'd like to send you a copy of my latest book, The New Holistic Retirement. You deserve a holistic and complete retirement plan. So why wait? Get on the path to financial serenity. All you have to do is request this book today.
Get your free copy of Chris's latest book, The New Holistic Retirement, at SerenityNowTax.com. That's SerenityNowTax.com. SerenityNowTax.com.
Hi, it's Vic Porcelli. You're listening to Serenity Wealth Now with Chris Cooper on 101.9 and 94.1 NewsTalk STL.
All right, welcome back. We've got Britt Phillips, my friend Britt. How are you today?
I'm fabulous. How are you?
Good. So we talk about emotional investing in this world, and I spend a lot of time talking about that. And so Britt is a psychologist, and I'm going to get this wrong because she said off air what her real title is. So Britt, explain to me a little bit what this role is here.
So I'm a psychiatric mental health nurse practitioner.
Okay. I see. That's not. It sounds a lot harder for me to say than it really is.
Yeah, that's in your head.
Speaking of headspace, I think you spend a lot of time helping people.
I do. Yes.
So what kinds of things do you help people with?
Oh, I help people with a lot of different things. Some people come to me because they're experiencing depression or anxiety or stress. And a lot of times we find it's a matter of conflict somewhere in their life. And so it's working through what that conflict is and the different ways we can do to help it.
So managing the stress,
yes.
if you will. So I talk a lot about things that are not always comfortable to talk about in my office, right? So I spend a lot of time talking about taxes and tax risk. Very stressful, yes. Passing away, with death, right? And
stressful.
Which I tend to say passing away. It's a nicer way of saying death. Most people understand that we have a life expiration, I think.
I would hope people understand that, yes.
Okay, I would hope so. But, sometimes you never know. You got to ask, right? So those aren't fun conversations to have.
No.
And then, anytime you talk about money, right? Family, money, it's always drama. So do you have a lot of people that are concerned about these kinds of things?
Yes. When we look at depression or anxiety or like the emotions we feel, a lot of it comes down to stress about their financial situation.
Right.
Whether they perceive they have control over it or if they have enough of it. And so a lot of times finances are a huge stress for people.
Yeah. So we talk a lot about trying to have good conversations with your family, get people involved. You don't have to take this stress on just yourself.
No, and I sometimes feel like people keep that inside, which makes it more stressful.
Right.
Because then it festers and it becomes something much bigger than what it really is.
Yeah. Now, do you think that a lot of people just are not comfortable? Like I've also noticed that there's some generational differences too. Older generations, World War II generation did not talk about finances.
No.
My grandfather would not talk about money. I think that's shifted a little bit.
I'd like to think it has.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, what do you think? Is there a society reason for that, or I'm just curious?
I think we live in a culture now who wants to be more transparent.
A little bit more open?
A little bit more open.
We kind of have to be too with social media, right?
Yes. And we see things on social media that sometimes I think it helps us think about things differently than what our parents did and our grandparents did.
But social media is always true, right?
Yes.
No, it's not.
No, it's not.
Oh, okay.
No.
We were joking.
We were joking.
Okay, good.
Were you joking?
I thought I was, but for a minute
you looked really serious.
But I don't know. I've got a doctor I'm sitting across from, so it makes me nervous sometimes.
I see you sweating a little bit.
So obviously social media is not truthful at times, or at least maybe there's some truth to it, but it has a slant, right?
Yes, it's a person's, the perception they want you to have of them.
Sure.
And so they can control that narrative.
Now, do you feel like that kind of causes some stress in our society as well?
Of course.
Yeah.
People can compare themselves to other person's ideals and not know the real story behind it.
So what kind of questions do you ask people to help kind of alleviate some of these things? Because ultimately, I assume they have to self-realize in some of this stuff, right?
Well, I ask them lots of questions, like hundreds. It probably gets really annoying after a while. But I'm wanting to learn about how their mood is and how they sleep and how they eat. And do they have feelings of like hopelessness and helplessness? We talk about like their concentration and their anxiety. And then once I kind of put a picture together in my head, I offer to them what I see is going on. And I always want to know if what I'm seeing is what they're feeling, because once we can connect those two dots, then it's easier to come up with a plan for that.
Now, who has to come up with that plan? They have to, right?
I like to think of it as a collaboration between me and my patient, because it shouldn't be me telling them what to do.
Ownership.
Yes,
Has
because
to be ownership. You can't own the plan.
no, the patients need to own the
You
plan.
can help provide some guide rails.
I can support it.
Yes, there you go. I like that word.
Yeah.
That's nice. So I do. We have some complicated conversations anytime when there's family members involved, right? So what guidance do you have for people that are concerned about things that are going on with, financial stress, or, gosh, mom's going to have to, go and need some assistance as they get older, right? We got the holidays coming up. There's always concerns there. What kind of guidance do you have that would help our listeners and community in that area?
Oh, that's a heavy question.
Yeah, well, we have heavy conversations.
I see that. This turned very quickly on me. I feel like being honest and open about how you're feeling and what your stressors are.
Yeah.
Like you mentioned, your grandparents never talked about money, or like that generation didn't. And so how did you learn how to cope with the stress of finances, and how did you learn to manage a budget? So I think being open and honest with your family. I try and be very honest with my children about what's going well and what I'm struggling with.
Yeah.
So that way they're learning as I learn. So,
it's funny. You just asked me a question that when I asked the question, and I felt like I was on like the couch, and I almost felt obligated to answer it. Mm-hmm. So well done. I'm impressed.
Thank you.
So I think that's the key, right? Talking about it.
And not being scared to talk about it.
Right.
I think a lot of times people are scared to talk about it because they feel like they're the only ones experiencing this, or nobody can possibly understand what they're feeling, when there's lots of people who are experiencing that and they feel like they do.
Right.
And so reaching out to your community and reaching out to support can go a long way. Sometimes as humans, we just want to be validated. We just want to know that what we're experiencing is okay and other people go through it too.
Yeah, makes sense. Having open dialogue, and then making sure you have somebody that you got to understand who your experts in your life are too, I assume, because not everyone is qualified to be the support system.
That's a nice way to say it.
Yeah, well,
You're such a nice guy.
Well, I try, I've been taught, I surround myself with smart people.
You have, I agree.
So I had to put my glasses on for this interview because Britt has her glasses on, and it was just, I had to make sure we, looked both very astute.
We are so astute.
So a lot of emotions go into this kind of stuff, right? Do you have any, we talked a little bit about that guidance, that support system. Do you see commonalities in people's feelings these days? There's a lot, winter's always tough too, right? It's just tough. I know I get drawn down by the shorter days and stuff. Do you see cycles like that? Yeah,
there's actually something called seasonal affective disorder. It's when people's moods do get lower in these winter months. When it's colder, it's gloomier. We're not outside as much.
Yeah.
That is a thing. So.
Yeah, it's not. Now, what can we do about that?
Try and enjoy the outside as much as you can.
Okay.
Make connections with people, even though you might not be outside enjoying other people's company. Still try and find ways to connect with people.
Yep.
Light boxes always help too.
Light boxes. Explain a light box.
So it's a box that emits light.
Oh, well, okay. It's pretty straightforward.
It is pretty straightforward. But so for people, I don't
have a light box. Stacy, we need a light box. I want a light box.
So for people who maybe have depression or they have seasonal affective disorder, a lot of that comes from lack of sunshine. Okay. And so starting your day with 10 to 15 minutes of a light box can kind of help alleviate some of those symptoms.
Nice.
And get your day started on a good foot.
I like it. Now, what about medications? I always hear medications, and we do a lot of prescriptions and things these days. Is a lot of that incredibly helpful, or is there the double-edged sword to this?
I think medications are one tool a person can use.
Yep.
I prescribe to the philosophy that if you're experiencing some sort of symptoms of mental illness, whether it is depression or anxiety or OCD, medications are a piece of it, but the bigger piece is going to be like that psychotherapy and the work that you put into yourself. So medications can support that journey, but I'm not a big fan of only relying on medications.
Right. Makes sense. Because is it masking? Is that the right way to say it? Or it's just helping you on your journey, perhaps? But I don't know.
I don't know to say it's masking it, but a lot of symptoms that we all experience, it takes a lot of work to change our environment for those.
Sure.
And so
it's like what you said earlier, the getting down to the deep issue at hand, right? And the medication doesn't necessarily get you there.
I mean, the medications can help with a neurotransmitter imbalance. That might be...
This is why I have my glasses on. That was a really big word.
Can you say it after me?
No.
Neurotransmitter.
Neurotransmitter. That's not bad.
There you go. You did it.
That was first try.
Good job. A+.
Oh, man. I feel better.
Serenity now.
Okay.
You totally distracted me now.
sorry.
Made me lose my train of thought.
Well, yeah, I mean, I gotta, make sure you ask, better questions for me here because I'm nervous. It makes me scared. So big stuff when we talk about emotions.
Yes.
So
Emotions are big and emotions are scary.
and they can lead you down paths that are even worse and kind of destructive at times, right?
Potentially,
So that's where talking these things out loud with professionals can help. So, all right. So anything from you, we talked a little bit. So let me ask, you ask me some questions. What do we got going on here? So what from a financial perspective do you think is a very emotional concept that we need to think about?
I think planning for our death is, I'm going to go right into the deep stuff.
That's good.
Yeah.
I like it.
Because it's scary because a lot of patients don't want, or patients, see, I'm in mode.
Clients, yeah.
A lot of people
Yeah, there you go.
don't want to talk about their own death. They don't
Right.
want to talk about what that's going to look like.
Yeah.
And in not wanting to talk about it, then they don't plan for it. And
Yeah.
at the end of and then what happens is when they do die, now their loved ones are dealing with the leftovers.
And it's a mess. It didn't go away,
No.
right? It got delayed and it passed on to somebody else, right? So the way I always have that conversation, let me know what you think. I like to talk about making sure we have that open conversation. We plan in advance because guess what? If you don't make a plan, somebody has a plan for you. Whether it exists or not, the plan does exist. And it's a plan that you want to develop of sound mind and body because otherwise somebody else is going to have it for you. Whether it's your kids, whether it's a friend, your parents, God forbid, right? All of these other people can have those plans for you, but really don't you want to be the one that has that plan laid out?
I do want to have that plan because when I do die, I don't want my kids to have to worry about that.
Right.
I don't want them to have to stress about that.
Yeah. And there's a lot of emotions there already with losing a loved one. So by planning in advance, you take that burden off your loved one.
Yes.
And it's usually a little bit more financially efficient as well, quite frankly.
That's your boat, not my boat.
And it is. There's things that you can do in advance. Finances are stressful.
Yes.
Emotions are stressful.
Oof, you just put two stressful things together.
Right? Well, that happens.
That's scary.
That's life, right?
Yeah.
That's life. So if you can help alleviate some of those concerns, eliminating or at least reducing some of the financial context, it allows people to focus on the emotional side of it as well.
Yes.
And so I tend to focus on those kind of messages, which hopefully makes things a little bit more efficient. And I think ultimately, when you do those things, you plan in advance, you have those important conversations, it becomes your plan. And then it gives you the ability to go, and you feel better too. There's some stress relief knowing that that big burden of the what if is kind of a plan. It's in place,
Yeah.
So does that make sense?
Total sense.
Doing it right?
Yeah. I want
Thank
people to
goodness.
have those conversations.
Yeah.
And I love that you're open to having those conversations with people and helping them plan for that.
It's important. So one of the things that I've found, and this is just in doing what I do, I have very hard conversations. We talk about taxes and, that's easy because we have a common enemy in the government, right? Like the partnership with the IRS. Like no one likes paying taxes. I don't want to talk about that. That's boring. So it is not.
I think
boring.
I've said that to you before.
Oh, it's boring, but I love it. So I do. It's an evil thing. You should see some spreadsheets. I could get all geeked out on you with Excel, but we're not.
You
going
just
there
made my
either.
brain crinkle.
So the one conversation that people don't like, death and taxes, like inevitabilities, right? I talk about those, but you know what? The one that's people don't like talking about even more?
What's that?
Incapacitation.
Oh.
So you cannot help the people that are concerned that you are going to need assistance with moving, having somebody else help you. Dementia. Those are the conversations people really get nervous about having, right? We'd rather talk about death. We'd rather talk about taxes. But
Then cognitive decline.
then yes, and I think it's because we're afraid we're going to lose control.
Yes.
And that makes sense.
And one way people can control for that is to plan for it.
Have these conversations in advance. We don't want it to happen, but I think a lot of people, and in fact, as we live longer lives, we tend to need some assistance. It's just
Inevitable.
It's the way life is. Wonderful things that are helping us live longer lifestyles, longer lifespans. We're staying healthier longer too, which is great. Well, we are. Yeah, Britt's got this look like, I don't know about all that. But you can stay active. I mean, I know you're active. You're big in the cycling community. You do a lot with the kids in this area doing those things as well. So if you ever want to learn how to mountain bike, Britt's your girl.
Yay.
So but it's important to stay active, and you want to do that as long as you can, right? So we are living longer lives. We're hoping to stay healthy, but our brain doesn't always give us the ability to.
No, it doesn't.
So we might decline. And as we do decline, we have to think about those risks. And yes, they're financial, but that's the bigger emotional component, is watching mom lose her ability to help herself, right? You almost lose your mom in front of you. And
then you're grieving
scary.
Twice, because you're grieving the loss in front of you.
Right.
And then when they do die, you're grieving that loss too.
So you can plan for these things, but it always gets back to having that open conversation.
Yes.
So, and we spend a lot of time talking about that here as well. So this is all fun stuff. I actually do enjoy it. But
I'm glad you enjoy talking about the financial piece. I enjoy talking about the emotional piece of it.
which is good. And
We're a
they
good
do
team.
go hand in hand at times, right? They really do. And so I try to help people understand the emotional context of where things are so that we can then solve that financial thing. I know off air we were talking a little bit about that. Like you have to, part of my job is to end up finding that solution as well. So you get to have the emotional context of these conversations.
Yes. I love that.
Yeah. So incapacitation, that's my big word for you today. So what do you think? Pretty fun word?
Yes.
Does it make sense why that's more people struggle with that more than the others?
Well, I think it's because people often confuse being incapacitated from not being competent. And those are two different things.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I always get, but you know, see, like Britt tells me I'm a control freak at times, and I can be. I mean, let's just be honest. So that's okay. You have to know yourself. I mean, she's sitting there going, you need to know yourself better. But I always look at that as losing control, right?
And losing your competency or your capacity.
Which is, yeah, absolutely.
Because you've lost control at that
You
point.
have,
And
yeah.
somebody else is not only determining that you don't have control, now they're determining your decisions for you.
Right. And so my whole thing, and this is in my brain how I think about it, because I look at it from the control standpoint, is I want to make these decisions to make it easier for my wife, my family, and my future while I have control, because I want that control, right? I feel like it's important to make those decisions. And I think you'd say it a little bit differently. You'd say, how would you say that? I know how you'd say it.
How would I say it?
I think
Say it in my voice, though.
Oh, I can't say it in your voice. No.
Oh, try.
No, I'm not even going to try. Okay. So I think you would say you want to make sure you alleviate that emotional burden from your family and your loved ones. And I think in the process, it helps you.
Yes. You've learned so much. How long has this been?
Right? I mean,
Yes.
yeah, I'm impressed. Oh.
I'm impressed.
Oh, well, thank you. That's really why I wanted to have you on here, to make sure that while I was on the couch, that I was, alleviating these things as well.
Okay.
So I think mission accomplished.
Mission accomplished.
Oh,
No,
man.
I do feel like alleviating that emotional burden is huge, though.
Yeah.
Because you never know when something's going to happen, and somebody might determine you are incompetent or you are incapacitated.
Right.
And then what?
And then what?
And then, yeah.
And we want to make sure we have, and it's just why it all gets back to these conversations. Have these conversations about what's important to you so that you help your loved ones make those decisions. They understand the decisions that need to be made, and they understand your wishes while you can, because eventually we might not be able to.
Exactly.
So, oh man, Britt, I got to tell you, I feel very relieved.
You look relieved.
Yes.
The relief is pouring out of you right now.
Well, I have a few meetings that are coming up here that we're going to have, of course, these complicated conversations. And I think I'm going to be armed to do that just a little bit better now.
Well, yeah, my work here is done.
So thank you so much for coming in.
You're so very welcome.
And now you can continue to psychoanalyze me in the future.
Oh, that will never stop.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
You're listening to Serenity Wealth Now with Chris Cooper. Request a free copy of Chris's latest book, The New Holistic Retirement, by visiting SerenityNowTax.com. That's SerenityNowTax.com.
Hey, it's Vic. Are you worried about rising taxes? Well, you're not alone. With government spending outpacing revenue, many Americans fear a tax hike is on the horizon. But here's the good news. You have options. Chris Cooper of Serenity Wealth Management specializes in tax-efficient strategies for income planning, legacy, and growth. Chris knows your money will go to one of three places: the government, healthcare, or your family and charities. Shouldn't your loved ones come first? Don't let Uncle Sam be your biggest beneficiary. Take control of your financial future today. Visit SerenityNowTax.com for your free copy of Chris's book, The New Holistic Retirement. Serenity Wealth Management, because you deserve peace of mind in retirement. Request your free book today at SerenityNowTax.com. That's SerenityNowTax.com to get your free copy of The New Holistic Retirement. That's SerenityNowTax.com. Serenity Now with Chris Cooper.
Investment advice offered through Fortis Capital Advisors.
This is Serenity Wealth Now with Chris Cooper.
All right, when you are friends with somebody that helps people on the mental health side of things, you always feel like you're psychoanalyzed. And Britt is a wonderful friend of mine, and it was really cool having her in studio talking a little bit about what she does, because we are not always able to talk about what we do with our patients and our clients, right? Some of those conversations we have are definitely more on that privileged side of things. But she's really good at what she does. And it's really cool being able to talk about the emotional side of things, because there's so much intertwined with finance and emotion. And how do you figure out how to get those things kind of together? Because they're very, very much related. They really are. Most of what we do in our life has an emotional attachment, right? Do we want to think about our children's college, our grandchildren's college savings? Is that an important thing for us? Will that make us feel good about what we're accomplishing and what we're leaving from a legacy perspective? Those are very emotionally rooted decisions. Okay, so we need to think about those kind of things. When we think about retirement, what do we want to do? Well, that's emotional, right? We want to have fun. I hope we want to have fun. I've not met many people that just go, you know what, I just want to retire and just sit on the couch and do nothing. I mean, that might be fine for a little while, but I'm sure that eventually you want to kind of get up and get moving and do something, right? Have a hobby, right? That's emotional as well. So it's important to understand emotions and then making sure our finances can fund those things. But we have to have those difficult conversations, right? We talked a little bit with Britt about some of those challenges too. You know, passing away, we have an expiration date. We want to make sure that we plan for what those events are, because those are emotional draining issues that affect our loved ones. And our legacy lives on. Our financial goals and really our life goals outlive us. So we have to have real serious conversations with those surrounding us, those our loved ones, our family, maybe our friends as well, about what happens, what decisions we want to make. We want to make those decisions while we can, or else somebody's going to make them for us. Okay. We want to make sure that we're responsible for those decisions, not others. And I think that's a big key. So being able to understand that, hey, I need help in this way. I need to have these conversations with people. I need to do it in advance. Bring your family along in that dream. Bring that family along in the dream, right? Dream like you dream of having conversations about passing away. It's not always fun. But I'm telling you, if you have these conversations with family members in advance, it's okay. Everyone feels these things. No one feels incredibly confident and comfortable talking about these kind of things. But if you have a professional helping you that you know and that you trust, having these educated conversations that can keep some of those guide rails in place, it can make sure the things that you're concerned about aren't going astray, right? The investment side is fine. Those fun goals. But you have to make sure that the goals come first, and that impartiality we put into place to protect those goals is where we really excel. That's where I focus on with Serenity Wealth. And that's where I get to enjoy the conversations I have, because it's really all about making sure your family comes first. And that's what's so important. Family comes first. And that's why I call it the Serenity Wealth family. We love what we do here at Serenity Wealth, providing that peace of mind, making sure people enjoy the lifestyle they deserve.
This is Serenity Wealth Now with Chris Cooper. Request a free copy of Chris's latest book, The New Holistic Retirement, by visiting SerenityNowTax.com. That's SerenityNowTax.com.
Investment advice offered through Fortis Capital Advisors.